Hi, my name is Emily Jaminet, and I'm really excited today to introduce you to a fellow friend of mine, author, sister in Christ, content creator who bounces around to many different jobs here in our Catholic world. And I also consider a friend. Allison Gingras is a just phenomenal content creator, and she's stepped into a new position of releasing her first book with Ave Maria Press, Encountering Signs of Faith. So, Allison, I'm very excited, especially the subtitle, My Unexpected Journey with Sacramentals, the Saints, and an Abundant Grace of God. So, thank you so much for doing an interview with me. I love to meet the person behind the book. And I think many people like myself, it helps you want to just pick it up and go deeper. So
Yes.
tell our, tell my listeners, tell our followers a little bit about why you chose to write this book at this time in your life.
So this book is literally 12 years in the making. The title, Encountering Signs of Faith, is kind of a play on words. My daughter, Faith, is adopted from China. She's profoundly deaf, and we use American Sign Language to communicate. So that's the signs of faith with her. But also the book kind of came out of my desire to share the faith with my daughter, who had no language when we first brought her home. And I really had to rely on the tangible signs of our faith, the sacramentals, the stained glass windows, picture books, praying the rosary with like things that she could see, feel, touch, and even talking to her about incense, things that she could spell. Of course, we can encounter our faith with hearing, but for her, we really relied on the other four senses, and they came together beautifully as I was speaking to Ave and Heidi at Ave about what kind of, I wanted to tell her story, but there was so much more to it. So that's where Encountering Signs of Faith came from.
I think that's really beautiful. And, for my journey as a Catholic mom with 7 kids, I think that the stories and the way we present the faith, especially through the stained glass windows, like you mentioned, are sacramentals, like, the scapular, the miraculous medal, holding of the rosary when you're scared at night. I mean, it is tangible. It's a really great way to foster faith in a way that a lot of times these mysteries are hard to speak about. So I love that you did that. Maybe share a little bit deeper on what that was like for you. Was it a frustrating process? Did you rediscover your faith along the way? Did you come to appreciate maybe some of those sacramentals you didn't really have much of a devotion to before?
Well, I think for me, it was interesting to figure out that God created us with all these senses. Of course, He's going to then give us ways to connect with Him, to encounter Him through those senses. And teaching the faith in the way I wanted to teach it, um, this deep dive of faith that I wanted to teach to my daughter, that was difficult at first, but she was 4, and that would have been difficult anyway. Like sometimes we just want to pour everything we know about God into our children as fast as we can, because we know how much that's touched our lives and how important that's been to us. But that's not, luckily, it's not how God does to us. And it's not what we're called to do with our children. And I really discovered so many things, Emily. It was incredible. I knew of the rosary, but I didn't know that Blessed Alan had a private revelation and the promises that came with that. I didn't know about the promises of wearing the scapula. I'd heard of the brown scapula, and I actually wear a metal one because of my eczema, but I didn't realize about the you know getting it's not enthroned in it. Is it enthroned? No, that's
Enrolled.
thank you. I'm like, it's an EN word.
Yeah,
Enthroned is the Sacred
my word
Heart.
is enthroned with Sacred
Yes.
Heart, but I like that enrolled. Yes, in the brown scapular.
So I didn't know about the deepness of them. And then I even, like, for instance, talking about hearing, did you know that church bells that are blessed, when they ring, blessed by, because sacramentals always come with a blessing. They prepare our hearts for the grace that God has for us. And whoever hears those bells is blessed by them. So I thought that was kind of neat. There's so many of these little moments that I've discovered that I share in encountering signs of faith.
Wow, that is really helpful. And I think that for each one of us, that's something that the bells we kind of take for granted. And yet, the rosary, we might even take that for granted as well. And we might have think of them as something that, grandma does. But I think you and I both have come to realize that there were these beautiful sacramentals that have been passed down from generation to generation. And if you're first generation picking them up, or you're maybe in the line of some amazing Catholics before you, it's worth going deeper. It's worth learning and investing. And I like how you tied in a story, not just textbook, quality information.
Well, I love the stories that I tell about the rosary because for me, it really wasn't something that I grew up with, other than when it was thundering lightning out. My mother was petrified, and she'd sit us on the couch. She'd hand us all these plastic rosary beads, and we'd pray just the Our Fathers and the Hail Marys. We didn't even know there was mysteries associated with them until my house, true story, was struck by lightning. And we stopped praying after that, though it was in my hindsight, in my grown up brain looking back, it did protect us. Like, the rosary was a powerful prayer for us because my house did not burn to the ground. The damage was very minimal, but in my little brain, my 9-year-old brain, it was, well, I prayed that this wouldn't happen and it did, so this prayer must not work. The other story I share is that my grandmother, so this was sometime later, my grandmother, when I'd go visit her, she lived far away, then I'd get homesick and she'd give me the rosary to pray. And I remember saying to her, "Great idea, Grammy. This is so boring. I'll be asleep before I know it." But what my grandmother knew, and what I know now, is that there's a power to the rosary. You fall asleep because you are, in essence, kind of holding the Blessed Mother's hand. And there's so much peace in prayer and connecting ourselves to heaven, especially our Blessed Mother.
I really like that. And some of my kids, I tell them, if they're having a hard time sleeping, especially my teenagers, keep those rosary beads under your pillow. And I've done that
Mm,
before, and hold on to them. Like in the middle of the night, if I can't sleep, and I'm a little bit stressed out, I'll run my fingers over those beads and
I love it.
remember that, our faith is a 24-hour experience. It's not just 1 hour on Sunday morning. And I think this book can unleash and unlock so much in the life of the reader, that
Yeah.
you start to see these connections that you didn't really see. And for me, Allison, as you talk about the miraculous medal, this is something that is as simple. Everyone used to be named Mary and wear a miraculous medal. And now my daughter's Mary, and she's the only one in her whole Catholic school. So we're in,
Wow.
times of new territory. But after reading your book, I actually went back and realized that I had a medal, but I didn't have a chain. So I went to my mom. I'm like, "Mom, do you have another like gold chain? Because I don't want to actually go buy one right now. Gold's a little expensive." And she said, "Emily, you know what? I actually have the miraculous medal and chain from your godmother, who passed away many years ago. And she gave me the medal I wear every day was the medal of my great Aunt Mary Grace.
Wow.
And underneath my image of the Sacred Heart, I actually every morning look at the picture of my baptism. And she was my godmother. So my godmother,
Oh,
my godfather, my parents are in the picture. I'm the little baby. And that's one of my morning part of my prayer life, is to cling to my baptism and remember, there's an indelible mark upon my soul. And I think if I wouldn't have humbled myself and asked my mom for a free gold necklace, I did say for my birthday, I'm like, if you want to get me something for my birthday, this was meant
that's
to be.
awesome.
So there's so many stories, and you did that. You helped us to see that there's stories in our heart. There's stories through adoption, through great experiences, and that's how Jesus witnessed, is through
Mm.
stories. So stories are so powerful.
Well, I think I start the book by saying this book is an adoption story, and that maybe you're not into an actual adoption of a child in your life or those kind of stories, but every single one of us that is Christian is part of an adoption story, our adoption into the family of God. And with family comes legacy, tradition, heirlooms, and that's how I see the sacramentals. They are these tangible reminders, these things that we can see with our eyes and feel with our hands that remind us that our invisible God is very visible, that he's very present, that he loves us, that he's always with us, and that when we need him to be present, he comes sometimes in the form of a friend or our pastor, but also he can come, we can be reminded of his presence in our life through sacred images, through statues, through windows, through scripture. Like there's just so many ways. And in my book, I actually do mention you, Emily, and your amazing book on the secrets of the Sacred Heart, because I love the images of the Sacred Heart and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And I share about Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, who is very dear to my heart as well. So I was thrilled to be able to share in just a tiny little way your book, because it just really touched my heart and opened up that devotion to me in such a special way.
I love that you did that. And I remember when we were emailing back and forth about it. And I think it's important for our listeners to know that, a part of being a Catholic author is willing to step forward to share an important message. And, we're all continuing to grow in the love of Christ to be able to, honor Our Lady. And one of the things you and I both, I think could appreciate is that there aren't enough priests to go around to priest hop to home hop, and come for dinner and bless my home. But these sacramentals, are such a
Mm.
gift because there might not, it's like when your mom's out of town and you need that mom moment, same thing with sacramentals, they can always be with you. And our priests can bless them, and they're treasures for our family. We need to, take care of them and hopefully pass them down. I don't know about you, but Allison, nothing makes me more sad is when you go to a thrift store and you see sacramentals. Like, I like to say Jesus is king of the thrift store more than homes these days. So, I mean, sad to
Wow.
say, and the antique malls and the flea markets up in New England, but we need to reclaim these beautiful
Mm.
heirlooms. I like how you said that, these heirlooms and sacramentals, and bring them into our home and cherish them.
Absolutely. And there's many stories about how that's how the infant of Prague is usually discovered and becomes a part of somebody's home, is that the statues that are, I have one, he's hidden right here. I'm going to bring him out. He was stuck in my great grandmother's, she had like a little shrine set up in her house, and it was stuck in a floral, like the floral styrofoam. He was stuck in there, covered in dust, covered in these very old um, flowers. And I asked my godmother if I could rescue him. But
I
I know,
love that.
and when I tell that story so many times, inevitably somebody will say, I got mine at a church, we call them here in the New England, we call them bazaars, but they're, the little yard sales that churches have, or they found them in a thrift store, or somebody gives it to them. Um, it's kind of interesting how that the Lord kind of makes himself present in these places where people wouldn't normally be looking for him.
Look
You
who
have
just showed
both.
up. I have my infant of Prague. Now this is a great sacramental because look, his hands are broken, Allison. But I broke his hands. I was cleaning my son's
Oh
bedroom and
no.
he fell off. And then I didn't know what to do with him because I had that, I can't throw him away. He's blessed. And, what do I do? And he kept like moving through my house with his broken arms. But then, I felt like the Lord was like, well, Emily, you are the hands of Christ, right?
Oh
And
wow.
so I keep him in my office to remember when my boys were little and this
Oh,
happened, but also to be the hands and feet of Christ is our mission. This is our call. And I think that this sacramental, even though to others it probably looks a little weird in my office, but to me, it is
Oh,
such a
it's so
beautiful
profound.
meaning. I know. So I'm glad you like leaned over and got your sacramental, and I got my sacramental of the infant frog. So I mean, there's such beauty, and it's
Yeah.
interesting, Allison, because a lot of my youngest is 6, so I'm still in the thick of parenting, first grade, and I noticed that so many parents, their homes are empty of sacramentals. They don't have religious items. But what I see I call it the season of darkness, as we're leading up to October, Halloween, they're so quick to welcome these idols, these images that are distorted,
Yeah.
demonic appearing, calling them toys, right? And so I see such a contradiction on, they might be quick to, I've talked to my daughter about this, give them a crystal, give them, these images that do not foster grace and faith and bring us closer to Christ, or remind us who our God is. A lot of times I have these multiple images, right? To remind people, who is Jesus? What does he look like? What are his attributes? That's what's beautiful about the Sacred Heart. But maybe share a few words on that, because I don't think most parents think about it like that, right? I don't think they think, well, I welcomed all these dark, figurines in my home, but I don't have anything that resembles the love of God, even though we're not playing. Well, sometimes they play them, but you know what I'm saying? Like in the sense of the imagery.
Well, I think well, someone comes to my home, I want to be this quiet witness of my faith and a beautiful image on the wall. And I think that sacramental, especially prints and statues, they've come a long way. There's so many beautiful Catholic creatives out there right now creating really beautiful images and things that you can decorate your home with, and they rival what you'd find in a department store, but yet they share something of who you really truly are. And don't we love to put out pictures of our family and remember them, especially like my grandmother when she's passed away? I love to have her picture up on my I call it my family hall. Like I have pictures all along the hallway, and I want to do that same thing with my heavenly family. I want their images to be out. I remember many years ago there was a famous like play that was being done in the Protestant community, and it was titled, "If you were on trial for being Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you?" And I thought, if somebody comes to my home, is there any evidence here that would convict me of being a Catholic? And it doesn't have to be in every room. You don't have to have a shrine like my bisavó did, which means great grandmother in Portuguese. But to have these images just around, that they become a part of your home's fabric, so that your children see this as a normal part of their everyday life, and it invokes conversation with your family, with people who come to visit, but also, as you said earlier, to remind ourselves of whose we are and what family we belong.
That is so powerful, so true. And, a lot of the work I've done with welcomeisheart.com, and even Michelle and I at Inspire the Faith, I notice that women especially feel like their hands are tied when it comes to decorating and images.
Mm.
A lot of women have said to me, like, I don't know where to put it, Emily. I just professionally decorated my home, and so sometimes these images even take baby steps. Like they might start, in the back office or den, and then slowly, I remember one mom telling me that the image moved close to the television, because they realized that was
Wow.
the place where the real spiritual battle was taking place. What was the family watching? What was allowed in? And I think a lot of times the sacramentals, for me, they are so powerful to remind me of who I am and what is the priority in this moment. And I too can get swept away and trying to run out the door to church, or we got to get to school. But how we act as Christians, how we speak, are we articulating the love of Christ
Yeah.
and being that witness? Those sacramentals a lot of times are so powerful, especially when you're in public and you're wearing a little Mary, right?
Well, one of the stories I share in Encountering Signs of Faith was going out for my 40th birthday, and all I wanted was one of those pedicures that included one of those deep tissue massages, and I just wanted to chill. I didn't want to do anything but relax. But that morning, I decided, for whatever reason, to make the prayer that I kind of make almost every day. Lord, use me in however you wish today to bring you to others, which I should have waited until I got home from the pedicure. But needless to say, I didn't. And as I was sitting there, I have, quite a collection of swag around my neck. I have a miraculous medal and a scapula and a Benedict medal and a crucifix, the Trinity cross. And this woman was just, doing the thing that she's, doing on my feet, painting my toenails. And she looks up and she's like, I used to be Catholic. I said, oh, okay. Um, and it just opened up this conversation. She's like, I noticed that you wear medals, like, why are you worshiping these medals? And so it gave me this opportunity to share this story, like I was just saying to you, that they remind me of my God. And when I need that comfort, there they are for me. And we ended up talking about scripture and the mass and what the true presence was, and all of this conversation that when we finished, she said, no one's ever explained to me the Catholic faith like that. She's like, perhaps if they had, I wouldn't have left. I don't know whether she actually came back or not, but it's not my job. My job was that day to be Christ to her, to share the true presence, to share that sacramentals are a way to connect to God. We're not worshiping, this medal. It's not my lucky charm. It is just this beautiful reminder that prepares my heart for whatever grace God has for me in that day and in that moment.
And protection. Sacramentals are such a great protection. I see that my children especially receive a lot of comfort. My sixth grader's into the brown scapular right now, and she
Love
has
it.
been telling her friends at school, like, why would you not want the brown scapular? Do you want to go to hell? I don't want to go to hell. And I'm like, Mary, if you tell people about the brown scapular, we have to actually follow through and get them brown scapulars. We need to get them enrolled, like this will be a little family mission. But like you
Cute.
said, the promises of the rosary, the promises of those who devote their life to the Sacred Heart, the promises of the brown scapular. And I think this book is a great example of not just the cute stories, not just, the beautiful stories, but also like there's a lot in meat and potatoes. It's not cotton candy. And this culture is all cotton candy. If you want to,
Yes.
look at the Christmas catalogs that are coming to our doors, at this time of year, like I just think, when is it going to stop? When are we going to stop
Right.
feeding them junk and start giving them the truth? And these stories, you awakened the story within all of us within your story, because like you told that story about the woman getting your nails done, like she can always come back. Like
Right.
the great news about Catholicism is that indelible mark actually from baptism is not erased on your soul. You can't the church secretary told me that, sometimes people will call and say, well, remove me from the book of Catholicism. And she's like,
Wow.
you're baptized. Like it's an
Wow.
indelible mark upon your soul that you
Wow.
are forever changed. So even in this moment, you might be in a crisis of faith. You might, be down a path of even Satan worship. I don't know. But the truth is our baptism is so important, and we
Yeah.
can always find that path home. And that's what the book did for me. It helped me to see that, first, I thank you for that international adoption, for welcoming faith into your home, for saying yes to harder things in life. This culture says yes only to the perfect and to the, if it works for me now in this moment. But you really took on, and just even as you talked about learning sign language and these beautiful obstacles that I think challenge each one of us to say, okay, what's God doing in my life? What
Yeah.
does he want me to do today in the long run? So my last question is, how did Faith respond to you when you told her you wanted to write a book about the story? Was she open to this? What did she, what was that like when you told her you want to publish the story?
Well, Faith has a cognitive disability, so understanding until it actually was in her hot little hands, that she didn't really completely understand what I was doing, but I know that she loves to share her story because her adoption wasn't an infertility story. It was truly God's, me and my husband going to the Lord and saying, we're open to life and however you want to bring it into our world, or into our family, but you tell us what you want us to do. And being called to adopt and being told in prayer she would be deaf, being told in prayer she would be 3 years old. And she knows that her story is super special. That, I mean, all of our stories are very special, but that hers is such a God story, and it was something that glorifies God and all of the things he revealed, promises, because as a woman with a great anxiety, I need those promises to lean on. In fact, the fact that he got me with such anxiety to go to China is another whole story that I share in this book. But she was excited when she saw the cover, and the little girl that's on here, this is Jen Norton Art, and an author never really gets to choose their cover, but I fell in love with this because this little girl looks so much like my little girl. So when we got the cover and I showed it and I said, "That's you," she smiled and she said, well, she was just really excited. And I was like, take my picture, take my picture. So yeah, she's thrilled that God has given her this life, and she's thrilled to share it with others.
Well, I'm super grateful about that. And, one of the things I love is you did bring up a great reality, and that's authors don't pick their covers, and they usually don't have a beautiful picture like yours. And with your daughter, I think that that's such a powerful story again of imagery and the power of imagery, and for her to connect maybe being deaf and, like you said, that cognitive disorder, but yet the picture says 1,000 words. And
Yes.
lastly, I want everyone to know, when you talk about your anxiety flying, it's so you make yourself vulnerable. And I remember leaving you a message after I read your book and saying, thank you, for making yourself vulnerable and not being, Pinterest perfectly adorable and no problems behind there. But you
Yeah.
stretched yourself. So maybe, in conclusion, like, what are your words to women who maybe are struggling with fear and anxiety, or they want to adopt, but it seems like too big of a stretch, or they want to, even put up an image in their home or talk to their husband about, coming back to the church? What do you, how can you speak to that woman that's struggling in that moment?
Here's another aspect of sacramentals that I don't think we know enough about, is that each sacramental comes with a prayer and it comes with a blessing. And to be able to lean into these devotions, and any of the devotions, and you don't have to do them all, and you can do one and then do one another time. You don't have to do them all at once. There's times in my life where I'm very devoted to the rosary, and even though I still love the rosary, sometimes I don't always get it prayed as much as I would like. But to lean into the promises of God, to lean into prayer first and foremost, whether you're holding your rosary beads or any of your sacramentals. One of my favorites, actually, I think you'll like this one, is a very special one that was given to me, the Sacred Heart. And sometimes I just hold on to this and say my prayers. But again, I'm one of those people who's a very tangible person that wants to hold on to things. I love my novenas. Pray, say your novena, the 9-day prayer, or whatever prayer you fits your heart, for the answers you seek, because God is not distant, and he's not going to leave you without some answer to that prayer. What might not be exactly what we want to hear, but he's going to come into your life. All he asks is that you ask, seek, knock, and open your heart, and you will see just amazing things happen as you allow God in through prayer.
Well, I'm very excited. In the month of October, we begin this journey. Tomorrow, we'll be releasing this video, in the launch of your new book, to, tell the listeners where they can find this book, find you, learn more. I mean, Allison's involved in a lot, everyone, and not only a Catholic speaker, writer, podcaster, contributor, a Catholic mom, diocesan contributor, but, give them a little taste of where they can connect with you.
I work for Family Rosary and for Catholic Mom and for the Diocese of Fall River as a social media consultant. So I'm always on social media. I'm there at Reconciled to You, reconciledtoyou.com. And then all of my handles on all of my social media is Reconciled to You. And I always tell people, first and foremost, when you're purchasing a Catholic book, if you have a Catholic bookstore near you, please patronize that first and foremost. Not only does it help that small business, but if you're looking for it, somebody else is looking for it too, or will be blessed by it. So you help that small business. And of course, Ave Maria Press, avemariapress.com, or my website, Reconciled to You.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for doing an interview with me.
Thank you.
I love this time that we got to spend together, and I'm
Too.
definitely excited to see this book get in the hands of many, many people.
Thank you, Emily. I'm so grateful for you, for your model of living this life of being devoted to God. And I'm definitely a fangirl of yours. Hashtag.
It goes both ways. All right. Well, thanks. I'll let you get back to the new evangelization and promoting the faith.
Thanks. God bless.
Thanks.